Hi there.
Got off fun.
Interactive microphone.
I think I was waiting for some sort of cue. Are the lights the cue? I don't know this stage stuff, Tommy. Is lights the cue? Video Games Live, April 7th. It's April 7th or April 10th?
April 7th.
April 7th. Two shows, back-to-back, double feature. Bring the whole family. For those of you that don't know, since I guess we're waiting, is for those of you who haven't experienced Video Games Live, how many of you have experienced Video Games Live? Very good, very good. If you want to introduce your family to symphonic music and a beautifully orchestrated time, definitely go check out Video Games Live. It's a wonderful contribution to not only art, but to the music of video games. So, Tommy, thanks. I think we're getting ready to start. So, how many of you sat through the other panels? You don't have to hear me talk anymore. I'm going to do a brief introduction here. In preparing for this exhibition, which has been personally extremely rewarding, as I've said in other places, it took 3 years for this exhibition to occur, or to be created, but I've been waiting for this my entire life. And there is, when I look back at playing games and understanding what they meant to me as a kid and somebody growing up, trying to understand what computers meant in the world, and the ability to tell stories and to interact. There was a system that before my Commodore VIC-20, which allowed me to program, although I did try to program BASIC on it, Nolan, there was a system called the Atari VCS. Now, for those of you who grew up in that era, it is the VCS, not the 2600. So let's make sure that we're saying this appropriately. And it was created by a company called Atari. Nolan Bushnell is the founder of Atari, and of course, as I said, a key player in the growth and popularity of the very first video games. He's going to discuss how far video games have come and how it all started. I got a chance to get to know Nolan a bit better through the interview process for the materials we had in the exhibition. And all of the interviews actually for this project turned out to be some of the most insightful and very personal interviews I've ever conducted or ever been a part of with so many of my friends in the games industry. And it was just, I have no other way to say it, Nolan, but it just kind of transported me back to being that kid again and kind of, understanding the amount of myself that I wanted to pour into the games. And to that end, Nolan signed this for me.
Oh, boy.
What you're looking at, this is actually a Pong system board from probably 1971. And on the board it says Syzygy, which was actually the name of Atari before it was Atari. And so, Nolan, this is, has a huge place of importance within my personal collection. And I thank you so much for taking the time not only to sign this, but to have helped create, the machines that let us explore the wonder that we had growing up playing video games, and for all your contributions to not only the games industry, but to the world at large through these things we're able to bring to light. I welcome to the stage Mr. Nolan Bushnell.
I think we can have some fun. One of the great things about the video game business is a lot of times you can't tell when you're working and when you're playing. And it just bugs the hell out of my wife because I'll be there playing the game and she'll say, "Don't you have something to do?" I said, "Well, I'm working." and for those of you who aren't married, trust me, that's just part of the dynamic. That board that was laid out by the same guy that did the board layout for the Apple I, Ron Lane. And I had forgotten about that link until just now, and I just thought I should bring that along. In the early days of video games, we didn't call them that. The first time I heard video game was at the trade show after we'd already sort of built one. Started my career as a carny. I worked at Lagoon, and it's an amusement park about halfway between Salt Lake and Ogden, Utah. And we had regular stuff. And I was pursuing an engineering degree at the University of Utah. Going into the actual formation, this is Willie Higginbotham's Tennis for Two. And it was played on this screen, and it was relays and capacitors and oscilloscope. And that's really the first time anybody played any kind of a game on using computer components and a display, to my knowledge. I really think that's the big one. This is my professor, Dr. Evans, of Evans and Sutherland, and if that rack of equipment that you're seeing is actually a video processor. Each one of those cards, wait for it, it's a flip-flop. It had the winding speed of 100 kilohertz. And there is more compute power in a typical watch than there is here, let alone the iPhone or any of these other things. Then we come to MIT, the PhD-1, and the foundation of what I consider to be the real foundation of the video game business, and that's with Steve Russell, who, if anybody should be considered to be the father of the video game, it's him. He did a thing on the PhD-1, 100 kilohertz clock speed, XY display, funner than hell. That was where I got involved in it, because this was basically on the circuit. Anybody, any university that had a big computer, whether it was a PhD-1 or not, if they had a video display, they played this game. And at that time, there were baseball games, and I personally programmed a game in 1965 on this computer that was called Fox and Geese. And I later programmed a game that was a little bit like American football, but really lame. And what you don't realize is that there was sort of an underground, and they were on punch cards. There was a deck of them like this. And if you dropped them, you were really hosed. And it could take you a week to get them back in the right position. This is what the computer looked like. This was a PhD-1. And took air conditioning, a great big thing in the back. And this is what the world was like. To think that you could go from there to something that was commercial was a little bit foolhardy. But in 1969, this was the state of the arcade business. And this was a game, a driving game, and it consisted of like electromechanical slide projectors. And this was the image, and the thing spun around and looked like the road was turning. And it was fun. That thing made a lot of money. And then, this is what the technology was. Not a solid state device in place. These were all relays and various things. And to keep it running was really hard. They were Rube Goldbergs. Then there was a thing called Computer Quiz. This was another slide projector. This was a trivia game. Not a computer inside. But it called it, except for the name. And that's kind of the state of the thing.
Yeah.
Then I had this big idea one day when a mini computer came across my desk for $5,000. And I thought, wow, I'm going to do Space War on, for an amusement park arcade. And my idea was I was going to have 4 screens with 4 coin slots, because the games cost about $1,000. And I figured amusement park, that sort of thing. And I started down that pathway, and the computers were so slow that they couldn't refresh fast enough. And so I kept building these little circuits that would take over in hardware what the computer couldn't do. And I keep running out of time, and I finally abandoned the project. This was in the fall. This was, I was going to try to get things really done by the Thanksgiving holidays. And then I had the epiphany. Throw the mini computer away. And it turns out all the hardware to interface with the computer, it made it really easy, and then we got the circuits going, and bingo. And then to make things even worse, there's such a thing as too much innovation. I decided to do a fiberglass cabinet. I molded it out of modeling clay and that sort of thing. And when we took it to the trade show, man, everybody was baffled. They didn't know what to think about it. The girl in the brochure was a stripper that was down here. It's a whole other story. This is the sort of the core team. This is Ted. He was my partner. We worked together and did computer space. This is Fred, who was our first CFO, who got fired under a cloud. And this is Al Alcorn, a really, really smart guy. In fact, I get so much credit for stuff that Al did. But I get the credit because I had a polka dot shirt. Maglock Odyssey came along about the same time. And it turns out that Magnablocks, I've been in the only guy in the video game business for about 2 years. And all of a sudden I heard they got a video game in Birmingham. Well, it scared me. Had to go check it out. I went up and played the game. And I thought, boy, this is really lame. But I looked at some of the other people, and they were kind of having some fun with it. So I thought, well, our technology was crisper, more defined, a lot of cooler stuff, and so I needed to have something. And it turned out that exactly the same day that I saw the Magnabox game was Al Alcorn's first day on the job. And he needed a training program, a project. So I said, describe the game, did it. Remember, we played, ping pong games on the big computers before. But now, all of a sudden, this training project came. And we did Pong. And then we did consumer and all the rest. The Atari VCS, all that stuff. The Atari VCS was really the triumph of engineering and cost reduction over good sense. The Atari VCS had 128 bytes of RAM. That's not very much. And when we did it, we had a list of 16 or 18 games that we thought could be done on the VCS. And we thought we could do those 18 games, sell the cartridges for them, and then we were going to upgrade. Because memory was very expensive. And we all knew that the minute we could do a bitmap of the screen, that all hell would break loose, because it just turns out that you have a lot of time, because not a lot of the screen is changing. So if you're only focusing on the changing bits, you're good. Well, it turns out that guys like Dave Crane here were so damn smart that before we knew it, we had hundreds of games that were so much better, and our idea that we could only have 16 games was just totally bogus. In fact, one of the biggest mistakes I made is we calculated that we would sell 3 cartridges per main unit. Okay? So as a result, the initial production run, we had 7 titles. Everybody who bought the 2600 bought every one of the titles. So if you were to buy the end of that first production run, you had no cartridges. You had the one that you got it with, and that was it. We figured that decision, my decision, cost the company about $35 million. And that, you know, when I think of all the stupid things I've done, I really wonder why I'm standing here. Or, you know, I turned down a third of Apple computers for $50,000. Now, if you don't think that one hurts. What a lot of people don't know is that Atari started out with no money. Nobody thought the video game business made any sense. It started out with no processes. It started out with a garage shop, which was a good thing because we could build Pong in a garage shop. The problem was anybody else that had a garage shop could build a Pong too. Of the 150,000 Pong games that were sold, Atari only did about 30,000 of them. We got out-whacked in our own business. And we decided that the only way that we were going to survive, because everybody else had factories, they could actually build stuff in big numbers. I can remember Al Osborne, when I told him we were going to go to 100 Pongs a day, he thought I was absolutely nuts. I said, well, if you can't do it, I'll find somebody that can. And he found a way to do it. That was my tricky way. That's about as mean as I get. But we out-innovated them. And ultimately, one by one, we bankrupted every one of our coin-op competitors except the really big guys. How did we do it? We tricked them. Video games, coin-operated games, have a very short life cycle. 6 months, maybe a year. And so, anybody who was copying us, they would have a certain lead time. And we figured out that if we could mess with the brain, it would work. So get this. We had the semiconductor guys mismark some of the parts. But with part numbers that represented a different chip. And so anybody who was copying us, they'd copy our board, they'd buy the parts, they'd plug them in, boards wouldn't work. Hopefully by that time, they'd filled their factory full of cabinets and all that sort of stuff. And if they copied the wrong game but had a short thing, all of a sudden, by the time they got it figured out, it was no market. Meadows game, toast. Remember that one? We had the temerity to buy a case of champagne when they declared bankruptcy and have a party around their front sign. We were young, exuberant. Anyway, if you can't have fun, why not? So creativity became a serious defensive weapon. And how do you really get creativity? You drop risk, or you be willing to fail. Figure out a way to keep failure from being deadly. And so we figured out ways to fast track. We invented just-in-time inventory before anybody did. worked like a charm. And this is where I started and said, any idiot who has ever had a shower has had a good idea. It's what you do when you get out of the shower that matters. And I want to make sure that everybody knows. The spark of innovation is more than just a light bulb going off. It's starting to own your idea. And how do you start to own it? You start by having the idea in the shower. When you get out, you write it down. You start researching it. You find out if there's competition. You start figuring out the economics. You figure out how it works in the marketplace. And slowly but surely, you walk up to where pretty soon you start to own the idea. Anybody that says, somebody stole my idea, I said, no, they didn't. You wasted your idea by sitting on your butt. You don't own the idea until you capitalize on it. Who knows what this is?
Missile Command.
Bingo. This just happens to be one of my favorites, and I just thought, this is really crappy graphics. But you kind of know what's going on. Big explosions, cities that we're defending, missile command posts. And there's an interesting question that I want to ask you all in your design of video games. When is enough in terms of graphics? Because tournament chess players will never ever play anything other than the standard game because they don't want any ambiguity introduced into the game in terms of the shape of the pieces. Sure, you've all played chess with a game with a thing where the pawns look like bishops. You know, not a fun game. So what we did, all our games incidentally were casual early on. Remember this puppy? Got to tell you a story on this one. We hooked up a coin-op version of Combat, which was called Tank, and we put electrodes in the handles. and whenever you'd get hit, you'd get a shock. We thought that was really a cool idea. And we thought, well, maybe some people won't like it. And so we put a knob where you could sort of wager your pain. All the way from 0 to pretty painful. In market tests, we found out we might as well put a switch. Because people were either all in or all out. But the other thing we found is that just even though they could turn the switch off, the revenue in the coin-op world on that machine was about a third of what one that didn't have that feature on it. Which said to me that people didn't want to wimp out by turning it off. They just say, oh no, I don't play that game. Interesting psychology. The wimps. This is a game that's so baffling, I don't know why. David, you've heard stuff. David is a great human being and one of the brilliant game designers who Ray Kassar pissed off. That's another story. And he went off to Activision. It's what I call an alienation of affection. You know this one? Great game. Did you know that Namco purchased Atari Japan? That's how they got in the video game business. It turns out that we were young and dumb, and we had problems getting distribution in Japan, as a lot of companies do. So we said, okay, we'll just go set up our own. Not realizing there's such things as currency controls, things like that. We basically took suitcases full of dollars over there and turned it and got the thing going. It took about a year for the Japanese government to figure us out. And we were in violation of about 140,000 laws. So we decided we better sell this puppy and get out while the getting's good, or we'll find ourselves in some kind of a Japanese prison. We sold it to Namco, and they did pretty good with it. We sold it to him in 1975, and of course they made so much money on Breakout. I shouldn't tell this story, but I'm going to. We had the deal where we would ship them circuit boards, and they put them into whole games and that. And so we'd make some profit on the circuit boards. Well, of course, they cheated and started making some of their own boards, and we figured that we sold about 10,000 circuit boards into Japan, and there were about 80,000 breakouts made in Japan. So I don't know why they thought we wouldn't find out, but we ended up getting a settlement, and anyway, that's another story. Of course, Namco did Pac-Man, and this was our wonderful version of it on the 26th. Barely. If you really want to see a bad one, though, you should see E.T. Okay, now, this was after I left. But when they released E.T., they released more cartridges than there were players. Think about that. When queried, the management said, well, we figured that some people are going to want to take the cartridge to their vacation house to play. And they're going to play it on what? So anyway, the story of ET cartridges in the Arizona desert is absolutely true. More stuff. These are sort of the evolution of art. This is where we're getting into screen bitmap graphics. Remember this one? You know, the Sega did some great stuff, and they got so successful that they forgot how to be humble, and it ended up crashing. Remember Marble Madness, Bomberman, one of my favorites. I was looking for a graphic on Bomberman and couldn't find one, but it's there somewhere. All kinds. This is a good one. Tempest. This is one of my favorite ones. What was unique about Tempest? The monitor. It was the first color vector monitor that Atari ever made, and it was virtually impossible to keep running. Because in order to get a color vector monitor, you have to use the phosphor triggers color based on the energy of the electron. And so you're switching high voltage at high speed. The semiconductors at that time really didn't like that at all. And so it was a great game, but boy, was it a nightmare. I love the game. Then we come into, notice what this is. Mafia Wars. And you ask yourself, is this a game? Or is it drudgery? I mean, Did anybody else besides me start playing some of these social games, Mafia Wars, things like that, and you say, I'm tired of this. This is work. This is after I. But understand, this was after I played it for about a month. You know, I was trying to figure out what the thing was, and yeah, did I get sucked in? I did, but I was really mad at myself. Mafia Wars. Then we have SimCity. And, you know, SimCity was a great game. I love Will Wright. Good guy. Look at this. I mean, it's good stuff. And then we have Farmville. And, you know, which one made the most money? It's absolutely amazing to me that, and this is a lesson that I really want you guys who love video games to look at. Many times, if you innovate the economic model, it's more important than innovate anything on the screen, anything in the gameplay. Because by all normal standards at this space in our game, this is a pretty lame game. But it's doing really well. And you say, why? And it re-engaged a whole set of people that were not game players. It was not taxing. Didn't, you know, you could say the collective wisdom of the American population is dropping, or not. But at the same time, I found myself kind of having some fun with it. Like right now, I've got almost all the dragons. There's a couple of them that are hard. No matter what you do to breed them, the egg comes out wrong. So don't play this game. Yeah, man. Woo. I mean, look at this. This screen right here is why I do not believe there will be a next generation console. Why? I believe it is really bad marketing to say that my photorealism is better than your photorealism. And that's pretty damn good. I mean, the difference between that and an HD rendering of that same image is de minimis. So to spend $300 on a go-fast processor that will overheat and break, that was a nod to the Xbox. We can have some fun with this. But look at this. This is really good stuff. And the fact that you can get pixels and mesh to do this, I know how hard this stuff is, and I couldn't do it, and my hat's off to the genius that is the video game business today. Isn't that wonderful? I'm just proud that I had a little bit of part to it. These guys have just gone hog-ass wild. Now, it turns out that I have a patent on this. It was a game called Stompin', and the idea was to squish spiders. Didn't do nearly as well as this puppy. And
Nolan, I own one. I have a Stompin' at home. I swear, I have one.
which is more fun, this or Dance Dance Revolution?
Stompin' is much more fun.
Thank you very much. The vote has already been taken, and of course we have the great product. I was probably one of the only guys that projected that the Wii was going to be better and more successful than the Sony PlayStation 3.
Yeah!
And so you for the Wii or for the PlayStation?
Wii! Yeah!
What really? And why was the Wii so successful? Was it the gesturing? No, because it reset the whole dynamic. A lot of people just can't deal with today's keyboard. The controller of an Xbox of that is too high a learning curve. The Wii had one button, motion, boom. I can tell you, one button works pretty well. And the activity, and you know, and anytime you can advertise with a pretty girl, you're going to do something. Bring all the family in and, you know, break each other's noses. That's a good family activity. Let's talk about some of the crazy stuff coming. What is this? This is a new kind of contact lens. It actually imprints an image on your retina, a little bit like that. And all of a sudden, virtual reality comes into place. This is a game for a group of people, real cheap. You can do a whole desk platter now. This thing costs less than $1,000. The one from Microsoft is about $5 grand, $6 grand. And but they'll get there. Then, of course, the accelerometers, the iPhone, the gyroscopes in the iPhones really represent a whole new thing that you can do. And some of the things that we're working on right now are mesh networks. Mesh networks can set up micro cells for gameplay. So think about the dynamic of being on a New York subway and all of a sudden being able to engage everybody that's in the car for a little game experience and then move away. These can be really fun. You know, like while people are waiting for a movie to start, while people are waiting for a boring lecture like this, you know, you could be playing games or something valuable. Geolocation is really fun, and where you create these loose networks of gameplay and kill them. I mean, if you know where they are, you should be able to shoot them somehow. Then you have synthetic or augmented reality. It turns out that you don't realize it, but this whole damn museum is infested with evil monkeys. And the only way you can see them is through your virtual netscape. This is what they look like. And you can grow them, you can kill them, or they will kill you. Turns out that there's all kinds of interesting game structures now for public places. This is a game. Really cool game. And I believe that you're going to start seeing a lot more of this. This is a game. This also happens to be Burning Man. How many of you have been to Burning Man?
A little far away.
Okay. Yeah, but it's worth it. If somebody were to say that you can go to Venus, and it's made almost a good temperature, but closer to Venus than the United States, Burning Man is really worth it. Because what you really want to do is a totally bizarre experience with naked women and drugs. No, I just tease. There's a lot of art there. Physical experiences are the next big thing, where we weave a narrative in with a video game experience along with a physical puzzle. And we're working on some of these. Company's name is Versix, and it'll be coming to a theater near you. This is my current project in what I call the iMovie space. And it's a movie that you play. It's for 100 people. You come in, you sit down, and there's this damn evil queen who is a witch. She has banished the princess to a tower. The tower is in quicksand. If you don't rescue the princess, she's toast. She's also very beautiful. Turns out that you, or the prince who is going to go rescue the princess, has to recruit an army, which just happens to be in the audience. And you, as the audience members, have to help solve the problems that the evil queen is setting up in this quest to go through. There are 10 game intervals tied together by a machinima movie, and if the audience is diligent, they can save the princess, who is very beautiful. 5-minute reality has a dark underside. But this is what you're going to see in the next few years. And it's, I'm sorry for doing this, but of course, we have the iPad doing good stuff. I should do a call out of some of my favorite games, but I won't. The future's yours. Understand that everybody today has power that we didn't even think of in the 60s, in the 70s and 80s. Almost anybody can kickstart a product, put a couple of your friends together, and make $1 million. Have you ever heard of Minecraft? Great game, simple, done by a very small group. They've made, what, 300 million bucks so far? You know, this is really the time for the individual entrepreneur. And all you have to do is believe you can do it and have a good idea. Narrative, I talked about that. I mean, we all know where we're going. It's Westworld. And you just have to keep the non-player characters from going evil. There was a great scene in that, but I'm not going to talk about it. And that's kind of it. What I want to make sure everyone knows is how much fun it is to live a life in which you can't tell the difference between your work and your play. The video game business allows you to do that. And you're bringing happiness to a lot of people. And the technology is really powerful. I'm currently working on a couple of projects going into BrainRush or speedtolearn.com or wordplay. We believe that we can teach high school curriculum, 4 years worth of high school curriculum in about 6 months using game technology. Can you imagine what it would be like to go to high school and never have a minute that you're bored? I believe that that's not only possible, but it turns out that when you're not bored, things get sticky. The other thing is that when you are having fun, you're more receptive to learning. When you're curious, when you're getting it right there, and we can create a brain map of everything that you know. scary, huh? And make sure that there is nothing presented to you which you don't have the underlying fundamentals. Also, it turns out that if you train properly, that you can actually increase your IQ, maybe as much as 15 points. And I'm putting out some things, I'm turning into an author. I've written a book on Video Games 2071. This is a shameless promotion. And it's basically a book about, if I say technology, there's no constraints, what is the ultimate video game? And it should be out sometime in June or July. And I want you to all download one or buy one and contribute to the fact that I can really spend a lot of money. But at the same time, I hope it'll make some thinking. There's also some great gratuitous sex in it. I've also got a book called Hyper Ed, School of the Future. It's a little more serious, but fun nonetheless. And I think that we can have a really great decade or two. 2071, which is the 100-year anniversary, when I sort of placed my characters. They're having a ball with video games, and I think society will too. I'm not sure most of the people that are here are not going to last that long, but damn sure I won't. Thanks for coming.
Q&A?
Actually,
Presentation.
Yes, the guys from Twin Galaxies have something for Nolan.
So we have a special presentation, right, from the folks at Twin Galaxies. So Nolan, if you could kind of maybe step into the middle of the stage here so we can better see this. I will go ahead and make sure that we turn the mic over to the two gentlemen that just escaped through that door. So if you could. It's not the stripper, is it?
Does this work? Is this working? Okay. So my name is Walter Day. Many of you already know me. And I'm here with Twin Galaxies. And before I present something to you, Nolan, I just want to point out one thing. That see, Nolan's been in the industry for over 40 years. I've been in the industry over 30 years. And a whole bunch of you have been in the industry just as long. And we've all been contributing to this. And isn't this amazing? Look at where we are now, 40 years later. We're here in the Smithsonian. So I think we should give ourselves a round of applause. Okay. So I'm honored to make a presentation to you tonight. Nolan has he's been inducted into the International Video Game Hall of Fame, which is in Ottumwa, Iowa. He was in the first class, which was inducted in the year 2010. You've received awards from BAFTA. You've received, Newsweek considers you one of the 50 men who have changed America. You have so many accolades heaped on your shoulders up here that it just goes on and on and on.
But Newsweek didn't say whether I changed it for the better or worse.
Well, we can't necessarily say that Newsweek changed America for the better. So there's so many ways that you've been honored again and again and again, and rightfully so, because you're an important part of American culture, which has now become world culture. And so with all these amazing awards, still there's one thing you don't have, which I think could possibly be the most important thing. You can have lots of awards, lots of honors, but there's nothing like being on a bubblegum trading card. So ladies and gentlemen, brought in by the lovely Billy Mitchell, the official Nolan Bushnell video game trading card. Okay? It says number 165 here, and I got in an argument with someone about that because that shouldn't be number one. And what I did is I researched Topps baseball cards. That I was very devoted to Mickey Mantle. Remember Mickey Mantle? Well, so I wanted to find out how Topps numbered these cards. So I looked up their old list of their baseball cards, for instance, from the year 1960. And Mickey Mantle, though he was the biggest star of the season, he was card number 350. And I realized that what they did was they just put the different numbers in any order so that Mickey Mantle was 350. And
plus, Walter, I was number one, if you've seen my card.
have you all met Billy? Okay. Okay, so essentially, we are honored to present you with this card. And we brought some of the cards, too, if you want to sign some for anybody tonight.
Yeah, because I don't think this is going to fit on my carry-on.
Well, actually, when I looked at the sign for the TSA for security, it specifically said, no weapons, no explosives, and no over-large trading cards. So you can't get this on any kind of airplane. But we're so honored to give this to you. And
Walter, let's go ahead and read the text on the back.
okay. There's a backside to everything. Okay. And by the way, the Nolan K. Bushnell card, this is the only one in the whole series, there's quite a few in the series, that would put electrodes in. Okay? So in this dial, you can turn it down in case you don't want to be electrocuted by it. But essentially it says Nolan K. Bushnell, born February 5th, 1943, is an American engineer and entrepreneur who founded both Atari and the Chuck E. Cheese Pizza Time Theater chain. Mr. Bushnell's been inducted into the Video Game Hall of Fame and the Consumer Electronics Association Hall of Fame. He's received the BAFTA Fellowship and the Nation's Restaurant News Innovator of the Year Award. It was named one of Newsweek's 50 Men Who Changed America. Mr. Bushnell started more than 20 companies and is one of the founding fathers of the video game industry. He is currently devoting his talents to fixing education with his company Speed to Learn, and is also the co-founder and chief game designer of Anti-Aging Games, a website of games designed to stimulate the brain and maintain mental flexibility through game exercises. On August 9, 2010, he was a member of the first class inducted into the International Video Game Hall of Fame in Ottumwa, Iowa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think that, quite frankly, a trading card represents another dilemma. When we turn it into a game, do you want it to be a rare that's powerful? Or do you just want it to be one of the ones that get used a lot in dog ear?
That is complicated because
It's complicated.
do you want everybody to have their game, or do you want your card, or do you want everybody to be fighting over having their card?
Exactly. It's one of those. It's kind of this problem where you can be trashy but popular. It's been proven over and over again. Or you can stand for something and people will just sort of ignore you. So like Farmville. No. Good fun. Thank you very much. A lot of the older cards are coming out on iPhone and iPad now, which are really having fun. Atari is actually looking like they're going to get their act together again.
Let me say one last thing. To me, this is very important. Now, Nolan Bushnell's gone through the whole cycle of his own life, going through all his own adventures and having his own dilemmas, his own amazing victories, his own amazing obstacles, lots and lots and lots of stuff you've gone through to be here tonight. But your life, to the rest of us, now has really gone, it's kind of like transcendent. And really you've become so influential to the collective environment and to the collective consciousness of the world that really at this point in time you've become a force of nature. You actually represent now a force of nature in a sense because you really embody a lot of our ideals, a lot of our goals, a lot of our energy, and a lot of our creative stuff that's all got wrapped up into the video game industry. So I would like to propose that recognizing Nolan on this new status of being a force of nature, let's give him a standing ovation.
Is what have I done for you lately? And I think that if I do it right, the best chapters have to be written. Because I think some of the stuff that's coming up is going to be so much more fun than any stuff that I've done in the past.
Well, I like the stuff about the anti-aging games. I like the stuff about
Oh yeah,
because
we're knocking on that door.
well, speak for yourself. Okay, so yes, so it's incredibly important to do things now that really get down deep into healing people. Because some people say games can be rough on the psychology, can be rough on the physiology, and it's a very, very brilliant vision to be thinking about how to create games that are healing and energizing and also developing creative intelligence. So that, I completely take my hat off to you.
Now, look at the color of this guy's hair. I had hair like this at one time.
When I saw all those pictures, I never saw it. Well, on a serious note, I wonder what it says about Nolan. When he first did this, he didn't tell you that he did do it. He did want to make money. But now he's come to a point in his life where he wants to help educate people. He wants to help heal and make money. And heal people.
And make money.
And make money. And I know, and you mentioned the pretty girls.
And make money.
But it sort of brought you to a new level, maybe spiritually. Okay. Maybe the legacy that you want to leave behind you.
Well, here's the thing. The legacy will write itself. And if you create new powerful things, that's good enough. The rest of it takes care of itself.
Nolan always goes places. He always meets business people, meets manufacturers, people that have made a lot of money off of what he's created. And one of the things that I wanted to do here was to shake his hand on a different level, representing all the players in the world and in the history of gaming that have played video games, that have benefited and had so much fun from what he has created. So I guess that's why I'm here, is actually if we could give him one more round of applause for what he did for each and every one of us and the fun that we had.
So that is going to conclude the program for this evening. And I want to thank everyone for coming. And thank you to the guys at Twin Galaxies for coming. Thank you for Nolan for this incredible talk this evening. And we hope you will all join us to watch Tron in the courtyard upstairs. So let's head on out and up. And thank you all so much for attending the programs today.